sipurei masios, the fourth story, the bull and the ram. Story of miracles. The king who decreed apostasy. Another name, the bull and the ram, the king who decreed apostasy. The Muslim says the king who issued an edict to exile his subjects through religious persecution. And another term is the story of miracles. Once there was a king who issued an edict to exile his subjects through religious persecution. Anyone wishing to remain in the land would have to give up his religion, otherwise he would be exiled. Some people gave up all their property and wealth and departed in poverty. They wanted to keep their faith and remain Jews. Others, however, were more concerned with their property and wealth, and they remained, becoming moranos, anusim in Hebrew, forced ones. Secretly, they kept their Jewish faith, but publicly they were not able to. Then this king died and his son became king. He began to rule his kingdom with a very firm hand. He conquered many lands and was very wise. Since he held the royal ministers with such a firm hand, they plotted against him. They agreed to attack him and to kill him and his children. Among these ministers, however, there was a Marano. He thought over the situation. Why did I become a Marano? I did it because I was concerned with my wealth and property. But if the land will now be without a king, people will swallow each other alive. It is impossible for a country to be without a king. He therefore decided to tell the king of their plot without letting the other ministers know that their plan had been compromised. The Marano went and told the king that the other ministers were plotting against him. The king investigated to see if the accusation was true. When he discovered that it was true, he stationed guards. That night, the ministers made their move. The king had them arrested and gave each one an appropriate sentence. The king then addressed the Marano minister. How can I reward you for this? You have saved me and my children. I could make you a minister, but you are a minister already. I could give you wealth, but that too you have. Tell me what reward you want, and I will give it to you. Will you really grant my request? Replied the Marano. Certainly, replied the king. Swear to me by your crown and kingdom, said the Marano. The king made the oath. The only honor I want, said the Marano, is to be able to be a Jew openly. I want to be able to wear my talis, and tefillin publicly. The king became very angry. Throughout his land it was forbidden to practice Judaism. But he did not have any choice because of his oath. The next morning, the Marano publicly wore his talis and tefillin. Then the king died and his son became king. Realizing why people had plotted to kill his father, he ruled benevolently. He also conquered many lands. He was a very wise man, and he summoned all his astrologers to tell him what could destroy his children, so that they would be able to safeguard themselves against it. They told him that as long as he is careful with regard to a bull and a ram, his children would not be killed. They told him that as long as he is careful with regard to a bull and a ram, his children would not be killed. He had this written in the book of Chronicles. He also commanded his sons that they should rule in a benevolent manner as he did. However, when his son became king, he began to rule with a firm hand and autocratic manner. And an autocratic manner, like his grandfather. He also conquered many lands. Then he thought up a clever plan. So that his children would not be killed, he ordered that no bulls or rams be allowed in his land. He would then have nothing to fear. And he continued to rule as an autocrat. As an autocrat. He became very wise and devised a plan to conquer the entire world without war. Since the world is divided into 7 areas, it contains 7 parts. There are also 7 planets. Each planet shines on one part of the world. Likewise, there are 7 metals, and one planet shines on each type of metal. The king gathered together all 7 types of metal. He also ordered that it be brought the golden portraits of the kings, which hung in their palaces. Out of these he made a man. The head was made of gold, the body of silver, and the other parts the head was made of gold, the body of silver, and the other parts of the body of other metals. The man thus contained all 7 types of metal. The king placed the figure on top of a high mountain, so that all 7 planets would shine on it. Whenever a person needed advice as to whether to engage in a venture or not, he would stand in front of the part of the body made of the metal paralleling the part of the world from which he came. He would then meditate on his question. If it was something that he should do, that part of the statue's body would glow and shine. If not, that part of the body would remain dark. With this statue, the king conquered the entire world. He also amassed much wealth. However, the human statue only had its power if the king would lower the haughty and lift the lowly. The king issued a royal decree that all his generals and ministers who had rank and special privileges should come. When they appeared before him, he took away their rank and privileges, even if they had had privileges from the time of his great-grandfather. These privileges were taken away. The king also raised up the lowly. He raised them up and gave them the positions of the elite. Among the ministers whose privileges the king had taken away was the Marano minister. "What is your rank and what are your privileges?" asked the king. "My privilege," replied the Marano, "is that I have the right to practice publicly as a Jew. I got this because of the favor I did for your grandfather." The king took away this privilege, and once again the Marano had to become the secret Jew. Once, when the king was sleeping, he had a dream. The heavens were clear, and he could see all 12 constellations of the zodiac. Among the signs of the zodiac, the bull, Taurus, and the ram, Aries, were laughing at him. When the king woke up, he was very angry and frightened. He ordered that the book of Chronicles be brought, and there he read that his children would be destroyed by a bull and a ram. He became terrified. When he told the queen, she and her children were also terror-stricken. The king's heart pounded in fear. He summoned his dream interpreters, and each one gave the dream his own interpretation, but the king did not find them acceptable. He remained very fearful. Finally, a wise man came to him and said that he had a tradition from his father that the sun travels in 365 paths. There is also a place where all of the sun's 365 paths shine, and in this place an iron rod grows. If a person has any fear, he can come to this rod and have his fear dispelled. The king was satisfied with this statement. Taking along the wise man, he set out to this place together with his wife, his children, and all his offspring. Along the way stands an angel that oversees anger. Through anger, a destructive angel is created, and this angel is in charge of all destructive forces. One must ask the angel the way to the iron rod. There is a straight path before a person. There's a straight path before a person. There is also a path that is full of quicksand. There's a path that is full of holes and pits, and there are also other paths. Finally, there is a path where there is a fire, which is so hot that when one comes within 4 miles of it, one is burned. When they asked the angel the way, he directed them to the path of fire. This is the way they went. The wise man looked ahead, on constant watch for the fire. He had a tradition from his father that there was such a fire. Then he saw the fire. Walking through the fire were kings, along with Jews wearing the talis and tefillin. The kings were able to walk through the fire because Jews lived in their lands. The wise man said to the king, "I have a tradition from my father that if one comes within 4 miles of this fire, one is consumed. I therefore do not want to go any further." The king, however, saw all the other kings walking through the fire. He assumed that he would also be able to do so. The sage was insistent. "I have a tradition from my father, and I do not want to go any further. If you want to, go ahead." The king and his family went into the fire. The fire consumed them. so that he and his family were burned and destroyed. When the wise man returned, when the wise man returned home and related what had happened, the ministers were amazed. The king had very carefully avoided any bull or ram. How did it happen that he and his children were destroyed? The Marano then spoke up. They were destroyed because of me. The astrologers saw something, but they did not know what they saw. From the skin of the bull, tefillin are made. From the wool of the ram, the tzitzis tassels of the talis are made. Therefore, because of the talis and tefillin, the king and his family were destroyed. The kings who walk through the fire unharmed have in their lands Jews who wear the talis and tefillin, but this king did not allow the Jews in his land to wear the talis and tefillin, and therefore he was destroyed. This was the reason that the bull and the ram and the zodiac laughed at him. The astrologers saw this, but they did not understand what they saw. It was for this reason that he and his children were killed. Amen. So shall all your enemies be destroyed, O God. Amen. So shall all your enemies be destroyed, O God. Why are the nations in an uproar? You shall break them with an iron rod. This is the iron rod in the story. Let us break their straps and cast away their strings. This denotes the tefillin and tzitzis. The entire story is alluded to in this psalm. Fortunate is he who knows something of these stories, which are very great mysteries of the Torah.